All right. So, how was your childhood, and why did you join the armed forces?
Well, I always wanted to be in the military. One of the things for me is I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was obsessed with fighter aircraft when I was a kid. Used to go to a lot of air shows. My dad would buy me these little models that would you can display on your dresser, things like that. So it was something I always wanted to do. And then kind of more towards when I got into high school, I started seeing the different military branches go to our school to try to do some recruiting pitches. Stopped by the armies, and I was just kind of wasn't impressed with that. And then I saw the Navy, I saw the Air Force, and then I saw the Marine Corps. At least the recruiters that were there, they were doing McMap in our gym, and they were throwing people around. I was like, okay, well, let's see what this is about. So they were kind of doing some challenges and just things that just looked more appealing. Um, so I think at that point, because there was a challenge for becoming a Marine wasn't necessarily known to be easy. So I wanted to do something that was going to be difficult to see if I could obtain that title. And after I accept that challenge, then decided to go through it, and I became a Marine.
So, where were you first positioned at?
You mean stationed?
Yeah, stationed. Where you
Stationed.
first
I was
stationed at?
stationed in Camp Pendleton, California. So I was West Coast. I was a West Coast Marine. So, over there, you have the difference between Camp Lejeune, which is in North Carolina. Then you have Camp Pendleton, which is stationed out west in California. And then you have Hawaii. You've got Okinawa. You've got several different duty stations that you do. But Camp Pendleton is where I was stationed at.
So, what made you join the National Press Conference event? I want to say last year.
Yeah, last year. Well, I had, this happened at that time 14 years ago with what I experienced. And it was something where I had heard of Dr. Greer. I met him in 2017. I told him I had some information to share with him. And it wasn't really the full scope of what I kind of hinted some things to him because I really wasn't sure what I could do with this. And if it was something that, granted, it wouldn't get me in trouble or something that could, ultimately grant a lot worse punishment. And when he went on to Sean Ryan, he explained that the whistleblower protection laws were something that they were working towards, and he had a way to go in and handle that. So when he explained it on that episode, that's when I had his card that he gave me in 2017. I reapproached him, explained to him over the phone what I encountered and everything like that. And then I actually went out to Washington, D.C., met up with him, gave him basically my notes. We talked before I went to go brief the Senate Intelligence Committee, Special Armed Service as well, or not Special Armed Services, Special Intelligence Service, which oversees the letter agencies, and then the Aero Office and the Pentagon. So that time I felt like it was, if I was going through the right channels and I was able to actually testify and give the right information to the right people, I felt it was probably the best course to do that. And originally I didn't want to go public. But then I thought about, well, if this connects the dots or if my piece of information helps other situations or people connect the dots, whatever it might be, then maybe my contribution could help to an extent. And that's when I decided to do it, taking the risks and just basically jumping off the cliff and landing in the water. And that's all it took.
Have you ever seen a UFO? Because I've seen over 1,000 since I was about 5.
So the one that I saw in 2009 was the first one I ever saw, and that was a man-made one. Before that, I didn't believe in that subject. I didn't think it existed. I thought it was just something Hollywood and a bunch of directors and things like that. I never, in my childhood, never experienced anything like that. Never growing up, but at that point, that event single-handedly, which I think for anybody who is in our shoes, as well as anybody who has ever experienced something like that, that light would just click. So that would turn you into a believer immediately. Granted, it was man-made; it wasn't extraterrestrial, so that's kind of where the difference lies with that.
Believe it or not, the only reason I actually tracked down Dr. Greer was because he was the only person of two people that I actually seen that had an actual photo of a UFO that I've actually seen in real life.
Really? Wow. Which photo was that?
I don't know. It's probably like one in a forest somewhere. I don't know, with probably night vision scopes, probably like a few years back.
Wow.
I've heard you were almost assassinated, or was that just like a capture moment? Or tell us more about like the details on when you actually seen the UFO.
So when we saw that craft, which I mean now we call it identified because we know kind of what it is, at least on the background of things. You know, that was when we were intercepted by that team of 8 operators, and these operators had American gear. They had M4s with a quad rail system. They had an ACOG, which was a step up from what we were issued at the time, which was an RCO, a rifle combat optic, is what that's abbreviated for. They had a PEC 16, which was newer than the PEC 15s we were rolling with. So at that point, when we actually went down that hill or that slope, went to a little bit of a clearing, that is when basically 4 of them on each side. So you had like 4 here, 4 here. They were doing what was called a nosebleed. So they can basically get sectors of fire established. Don't even have to necessarily expend so much ammunition, but they can take down, an element such as us, which only were 6 of us, so already outnumbered by 2.
So
Um,
they're in full formation.
Yes,
Like,
they were basically 4. Yeah, so they're kind of almost online to an extent. They were already, by the time we saw them, they already had their weapons up. They flipped their safeties off, and that is when they started screaming at us and basically threatening us. That's when they basically stripped us of at least our M16s that we had, and the magazines we had in our vest is what they threw to the ground, because they had one guy that was over at a standoff distance, which is usually around 10, 12 feet or so from us, and he had his muzzle trained on us. And he had some other guys that were doing the same thing for the other guys, but this guy, one of them that at least that was in front of me, was aimed at me. And then you had 2, which one guy had a comm radio, and another guy that was actually physically searching us. And that's when they took our weapons from us, took our magazines, kicked them onto the dirt, and then so we couldn't reach for them. So that was, I've had people that would say, "Oh, how could you let that happen?" Well, if you already have somebody who's aiming a weapon at you, are you going to move? You're going to chance for them to shoot you, especially the way that these guys were moving. That was my hint that these guys were in special operations to an extent, because the way that everything was just precise, it was so smooth. It wasn't like, it's like they rehearsed it several times, but it also felt like this was something they did on a regular basis. So none of us were going to take that chance. If we already are sighted in, or at least they were sighted into us, we weren't going to do anything that was going to warrant us to be killed. And thankfully, because we're still here.
so what kind of emotions were you feeling? Because I've personally been shot at a few times. One time, well, I was with a woman. The bullet missed her by a centimeter, and
Ooh.
everything was like in slow motion to me. So, what were you actually feeling when this happened?
Well, we were scared, man. I know I was scared. I was had the thoughts going through my head, I'm not going to see my family again. I'm going to die right here. What are they going to do with our body? What are they going to tell people? Because we see this going on in the background with the craft, and then you have these operators. At that point, you start kind of asking yourself, like, is this really how your life is going to end? How is this going to, what's going to be of this at past this moment? So you start kind of thinking about shit that you kind of regret. You could have done better. And it's happening so quick because you're staring at somebody. A bunch of people are pointing their weapons at you, and you have no idea who they are. You see this craft in the background. It's an unbelievable situation as it is. So, if they have access to something like that and they keep it secret, who's going to say they have access to kill us? Which they did. They could have, and they could have done anything with our bodies. We could have went missing. We could have been dead and went missing. They could have discarded our body somewhere else. So there's just a bunch of different thoughts that were going through, but mainly it was fear, upset, sadness, anger a little bit, because obviously you're kind of in a helpless position.
let me just say I actually respect whistleblowers and the fact that you actually, you know, are willing to, testify and come out against everything. Have you actually seen I want to say the footage of the UFO that the Pentagon actually released a few years back, where it was like a Tic Tac UFO?
I have never actually seen that. I don't really follow the subject a whole lot, and now that I'm involved, I see what's coming forward with other people I know who are working in this. You know, some of them are prominent people that we don't basically talk about our circle, so to speak. But we basically kind of just keep tabs on each other and see what kind of information is coming forward. If you do have the link to that video, send it to me and I'll check it out.
All right.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Logic over.
Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get
Did you box moving target?
602.
No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.
What do you think about the failure in security that led to President Trump almost getting assassinated?
So, I mean, obviously, the excuses that they came up with on that day for somebody who's an oncoming or potentially oncoming, granted, I don't get political, but he's a former president. And in my view, I think that there should have been a lot more they could have done on his end to make sure he was safe. Those agents should have been more prepared. I mean, for me, running my business, I treat every client of mine as if they were somewhat like the president, for example, because their safety is paramount. They're the ones that hired us. And we're going to basically have a good reputation, and we're going to do what we can to make sure the affected parties are safe. And if that was to have happened, we would have gotten them out much faster. Security would have been doubled down. We'd have had eyes on everything. So the minute that something looked suspicious, we'd have known about it, and we wouldn't have taken chances, and we would have gotten the hell out of there. And I don't understand how the Secret Service couldn't have done the same. It doesn't matter who it is. It could have been Biden, for example. They could have done the same thing. So there's people out there who were, oh, it's great that they tried to kill him. I don't wish it on anybody, regardless of what I personally feel about, other politicians. They're still humans at the end of the day. There's still people. It's still life, So for that to happen, I think it was kind of embarrassing because into adversarial countries or even people, terrorist organizations or insurgent groups, they look at that as a failure of security. What makes it more apparent to say that people are not prepared? More somebody like that. I mean, these groups could take their notes and see where the flaws were, and they could exploit that. So that's kind of what it was. It's just an embarrassment.
We both agree.
Yeah.
All right, now here's where it gets kind of a little bit weird. I'm taking all of these from actual, articles. How do you feel about biotech companies growing babies to harvest their organs like cattle?
I don't know anything about that. I've heard conspiracies and rumors. If it is true, it's completely barbaric because it shouldn't be something that exists. And anybody who participates in anything like that, honestly, should they're monsters. They're horrible people. How could you do something like that? I mean, humans especially. I mean, it doesn't even matter. Animals is also the same thing, So harvesting for organs and blood and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's disgusting.
How do you feel about scientists creating new life forms from human DNA?
There's benefits to that. I look at it in the sense of, let's say, if they get to the point, and this is kind of why I'm more on the side of this technology coming forward, because I want it to affect the medical industry in a way that, let's say, you have a failing heart or something. Who's to say they can't take your DNA and create a heart using materials, and then they can implant that in you to replace it, and it ends up being a perfectly fine functioning heart that adds more years to your life. And I think they could eradicate cancers the same way. They could eradicate a lot of problems with people in the same way. This could definitely expand our livelihoods, a lot better. And I think of it in a sense like when my grandmother, who was like my mother to me, when she passed from pancreatic cancer, that was a stage 4. If this technology was out, for when it should have came out, which was more in the 40s and 50s, to the public, I think it could have saved her life to an extent. We could have been a lot better as a species and a lot better as a society among humans, and more consciously adept. So I think that if scientists are able to have a breakthrough on that to help with medical technologies to help people who have failing organs, maybe they're going blind, maybe they need an eardrum, maybe they need new limbs. I mean, who's to say that they wouldn't be able to have a breakthrough on that? I think it's incredible.
What do you think about the right to privacy and being spied on, and how people get tricked into signing away their rights through cell phone apps?
Well, here's the thing. As a business owner, as somebody who has websites, we track data, which helps us with lead generation through AI technology. So it allows us to actually pull data from people coming onto our websites. And sometimes we get people that want to fill out information because they need a piece of equipment or something. And sometimes they don't because they don't want to deal with the phone call, or maybe they think they're going to be spammed. Their phone calls are like insurance companies, they're relentless. They'll blow your phone up 15, 20 times a day trying to get you to buy insurance. We don't necessarily do that. But I think in a sense like that, we're not trying to be invasive. Now, if you have technologies out there that are trying to spy on you because they think you're an insurgent or a terrorist, or somebody who's ill-minded or ill-hearted, I think that kind of benefits because then people know about it. But if you have somebody who's just living their life, who's not even like that, who's being spied on, I don't think that should happen. I think everybody should have the right to privacy because everybody has to have that. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have our privacy. We all have our private lives, outside of work or whatever it might be. I know people are not comfortable with the idea of other people knowing everything about somebody, especially from an external source like that.
Do you think the United States will ever turn into a mass surveillance state with a social credit score?
I don't think it could go both ways. It's already a surveillance state to an understanding as far as the country is concerned. That's why they got cell towers that ping locations. That's why agencies can figure out everything on your phones. So that is something that people don't understand. It's already happened, and it's already been happening because of when the Patriot Act was initiated because of September 11th. But I think in the sense of safety, it could prevail. What was the last part of that question too?
With a social credit score, I guess like China.
I mean, anything could happen. It depends on what they try to pass in law. Do I think that it's possible? Yes, to an extent, but do I think it would probably take a very long time to do it? Yes, because you're having to rewrite an entire financial system. The financial system of this country is based off of debt. The difference between rich people and poor people is rich people love debt because they capitalize on that and they use debt to make money, as opposed to poor people just getting debt just to pay for stuff and just to have simple luxuries. So when you are somebody, who knows how to do that and to leverage debt to make money, because one, you don't pay taxes off debt. You don't ever pay taxes on debt. So that's the reason why. So this is a whole different subject I could teach people how to do. But at the same token, they're going to have to rewrite everything. Not only that, but it's going to actually throw a wrench in their plan, especially how the 1%, and I'm talking about the income earners business owners, CEOs, presidents, even these big companies, it's going to change the dynamic completely. And one of the things that I've noticed with a social credit score theory is that they're going to have to develop some sort of universal income, which is also the thing that people have been talking about. So if they were to do something like that, it could integrate it much faster because you have an actual income system that's not dependent on other companies, other industries, things like that. It's just given to everybody. That's when I think it could be implemented. But the way that we're on right now, I don't think it has a good chance at all.
Do you believe in constitutional rights?
100%. I am a constitutionalist. I'm not a Republican. I'm not, as a 32nd degree Freemason, what a lot of us actually understand is that Anderson's Constitution, which is a Masonic Constitution, was used as a template to create the American Constitution that we have, as well as some of the Bill of Rights. So for us having a history, as well as some brothers, especially fellow Masons who at one point signed that Declaration of Independence and also made the Constitution and signed it, I think it's huge. And I think it's something that if the Constitution allows us to keep the government in check, to keep basically boundaries of both parties where freedoms are adhered to, I respect that 100%, and I believe in that 100%. When we take an oath to the Constitution of the United States. We're not taking an oath to Trump. We're not taking an oath to Biden or any kind of senators or congressmen or the government. It's for the Constitution. The Constitution is what helped creates the government. This is where you could say there's been a runaway from that. You have people who try to interpret things or try to put their spin on it, which is completely wrong. Whatever it says in that Constitution is what it says, and that's what it's intended for. The founding fathers as well, they understood that there was an inclination of technology that was going to increase and better itself over the years. They understood that that was going to happen. So that's why they wanted to keep things kind of in a sense that would still affect us 250 plus years later. So they understood that.
Why do you think there has been such a, I want to say, disinformation campaign about UFOs?
So there's a big reason for this. The big reason is not because they want people to not know the existence of NHI or extraterrestrials. It's the fact that we as a human species have had access to this technology since the 1800s. So if you have these companies which have a stranglehold on the population of Earth, meaning that they own oil, gas, coal, all those power sources which we all depend on, as well as the global financial system, which also backs all of that too, and that's how they actually make their money as well. All of those people would go bankrupt because somebody brings a free energy device that completely eradicates everything as far as needing dependency on any type of power source. Every house could have one. Every car could run off of this kind of technology. So you wouldn't have to pay for fuel. You wouldn't have to pay for utilities. It would make people completely independent. This is not what they want. They want control. They want to be able to have dependency of people depending on their resources because this is how they make money. This is how the oil, gas, and coal industry is $700 trillion. This is the reason why a lot of people depend on that kind of stuff. So if this was to come forward, and this would basically make them go bankrupt overnight. So part of the issue is that a lot of the people that have assets in these industries and have all the wealth, have all the money, they typically like to buy people and they like to buy these products. So if they know somebody comes up with a free energy technology, the first thing that they'll do is they'll offer them money for it. And they'll pay them, 45, a couple $100 million, if that. And then they take the technology and black shelve it. So it doesn't circulate.
And the top, our news here at 6 o'clock, an age-old dream becoming a reality. A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
Water has always been considered a precious commodity, but Stan Meyer's invention may make it even more valuable. He has developed what's called a water fuel cell. It has taken the place of his old gas tank. The water fuel cell breaks down water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is used to run his dune buggy.
I don't care if you use rainwater, well water, city water, ocean water. If you don't have any fresh water, go ahead and use snow. If you don't have any snow available to you, they use salt water because there's no adverse effect to the fuel cell.
Meyer started working on this project 4 years ago. He's not a scientist. He isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college. Myers was determined, he says, to design something to protect this country from oil embargoes.
And we have calculated that if we take the dune buggy from Los Angeles to New York, we would roughly use 22 gallons of water.
Now, if you don't take the bribe or that carrot, they often have wet works happen, which is basically assassination. And this has been proven throughout history. This is something that even Dr. Greer's got documents on people he's known who have came up with these technologies and they were murdered for it. So the biggest reason why it's kept secret is because they're going to have to explain to the whole world on why we're still running on the 1800s technologies when we can be so further advanced with cutting edge technology revolving around consciousness. So that is why they're kind of keeping this secret. It's more power control more than anything.
What do you know about technology used for capturing extraterrestrial vehicles?
So the technologies that are used for this is more on the sense of scalar longitudinal weapon systems, or EMPs. These are very advanced EMPs. They're not typically the standard stuff that people would think.
So
some of these are surgical.
You can make in your like house out of like just random stuff.
No. These incorporate a technology that's even beyond the speed of light, and that's how they take down these craft. So they use consciousness assisted technology with some people, as well as some of the people that I've talked about, which are the P3s, or that what stands for the psionic potential predisposition, right? So that was basically people who have borderline psychic abilities with consciousness that can connect to extraterrestrials in a similar fashion with CE5, but more advanced, right? So they're using technologies to help amplify that with the use of drugs on these specific people. And then they use these weapon systems once these craft are lured in. And granted, it doesn't happen all the time, but usually, at least the base that I went to 2 to 3 times a year, they're able to target these craft and shoot them down. So most of the time they're using weapon systems to defeat or at least stun ET craft so they can fall out of the sky. And this is when these retrieval teams go and take them.
Believe it or not, that was one thing I actually had like a brief conversation with Dr. Greer. He was actually shocked that I've never used any kind of psychic powers or whatever to actually see any type of UFOs or anything like that. Honestly, I'm more into the actual crafts and the people piloting it, but I'm not really into the whole psychic aspect. But I do believe that there might be something to it, but I'm not too sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, me neither, man. I'm only going off of what people that I know that deal with this on a daily basis and what they're exposed to that I'm working with. And, they've done a lot of work around this. So it's the only way I can really hint it. So they kind of tell me how this goes down. So if I'm ever included in a point where I can publicly talk about that, then I probably will. Stuff to an extent. As far as it being dark and involving killing non-human intelligence and things like that, I don't support that. Do I support us using good technology to help better us? 100%.
Have you ever seen the use of a direct energy weapon?
I have not personally. There's been some video footage I've seen, which I know is real because of the sources that disclosed. Personally, no, I have not seen that.
Why do you think the government has been covering up anti-gravity research since the 50s?
I think well, so here's the issue that people have as far as understanding. And I get it. It took me a long time to realize this. Granted, it was last year. Um, the government really chose to privatize. So there's been some retrievals done or some crashes that they have worked on, and they've given the wreckage to privatized industry like aerospace companies, right? What ended up happening is that the aerospace companies cracked the code and figured it out. Some folks in the government knew that, but of course, they were starting to get paid under the table by these corporations. These corporations then said, hey, government, we don't know what this is. We're just going to go ahead and discard it. But yet, here they go reverse engineering a lot of stuff with that. And they basically made them to where they could be more sophisticated, more advanced, and they cracked the code with that kind of propulsion systems or anti-gravity. And that is why part of the secrecy exists, is because they want to keep a monopoly on it. They could say, oh, well, we can sell this technology to the public. Well, that's not going to make them enough money if they already monopolize it. Plus, they put spin-off patents of certain technologies out there, and that's how they also rake in money. So this is more of a monopoly as well as power and control. Does the government have some sort of understanding with it? Yes, not all the government though, but certain people within it. So as a government as a whole, no, they don't. But certain people in the government that may have access, yes. Such as the legacy program. The legacy program is a government program. It's not a deep black program like the P3s, for example, even though there's relatable stuff. The other thing that people need to understand is that the legacy program itself does not mean it's completely bad through and through. There's some good things that they do in these programs as well, and there's some stuff that's not so good. So this is kind of where the confusion lies.
How do you feel about the police force being replaced by all robots one day?
Well, robots don't have the ability to have emotion or judgment. And a robot can't determine that, for example, because the kid painted it. Is that robot going to be able to distinguish that situation to understand that no, this kid does not need to die because he's holding a Nerf gun that's painted black that may look like a pistol, as opposed to a police officer? Yes, sometimes they're tricked. Sometimes they overreact. Sometimes they're scared. I understand that, but I don't think that a machine can make proper judgment on a situation like that. That's where I think it kind of get very iffy and scary. Does it mean that people can stop dying to an extent? Yeah, if we got police officers that don't have to be killed every night and they're worried about going home to their wives, but as well as any perpetrators, it also goes to what measures they also apply to a police officer. If a police officer feels like everybody else's life, including theirs, is in danger, they're going to neutralize the threat. And I would be one to help with that too. All of us would defend ourselves and other people we care about. That is the responsibility of a law enforcement officer. So do I think that they should have robots in that sense? I think if it makes their job easier, maybe pursuing people could make it easier, but making a judgment to neutralize the threat, I think, is very iffy.
So what do you think about DARPA's advanced robot, I want to say, sector? Do you know anything about it?
I don't know anything about it. I can probably guess by that information that maybe is some very cutting edge stuff that they're doing with robotics and maybe implementing human life into something like that. I know DARPA is creating a lot of crazy stuff, and specifically what, I don't know, but I know that that's kind of their research, is doing stuff that's on that level. So don't know a whole lot about it, but if it's something that's beneficial to us and that helps us out, so be it. But if it's something that's just more to aid them in their whatever agenda that they're a part of, and it's not for us, like people like you and myself, then I mean, there's going to be something that breaks soon.
How do you feel about the COVID shot having the most side effects of any vaccine ever?
Well, I think they use the word vaccine to get people comfortable with using it. I don't really think it's a vaccine. And my personal opinion, this could, if anybody has a different opinion than this, then so be it. Bless you on that. But my personal opinion, and from what I understand with biochemistry, is that a vaccine prevents you from getting that illness. I had a smallpox shot, and guess what? We probably came in contact with smallpox, but I never got smallpox, right? I don't really think of flu vaccines are different because flu actually mutates. Flu viruses actually mutate and get stronger. So that's where this kind of happens. Do I think a COVID shot was really a vaccine? No, because it takes usually several years to come up with a vaccine. I think it was something that maybe they could have done to help people, but then I understand there may be some malicious intent behind it with the injuries. It also, what I understand is that anybody who had kind of underlying conditions on a genetic level, such as a weak heart or things like that, I understand that it probably brought a lot of it out, but the virus also did the same thing. So my personal opinion, which I could be wrong, is I don't think it's a vaccine. I just think they use that word to try to get people to get comfortable putting something that's very unknown into their body and maybe tricking people.
How do you feel about the fact that the NIH did evolutionary research on transmission studies on coronaviruses specifically before the pandemic happened?
Well, they're always doing research and development and any kind of viruses for that matter. Something that's more specific with that, I think they had more of an understanding, and I think it's a shame on them when they had to say that you literally had Fauci admit to everybody that they made up the guidelines. There's no scientific data and research data to back up this transmission, right? So 6 feet from somebody, I'm sorry, but stuff goes airborne, people could still get it. If, there's certain viruses that if they have any kind of contact, like through, like HIV only has a half-life to an extent because once it's oxidized, it's different. When you have different viruses that can live on a surface for a few days, that's different. So I think that at that point, there could have been more studies done to actually benefit and say, hey, no, these are the real precautions that we have to take. So what I understand too, and this is just, again, my opinion, if they actually did their homework and we're just trying to bullshit everybody, they could actually curb the potential of something actually catastrophic happening and actually being very lethal in comparison to what COVID would ever be. So does it really establish the confidence in the scientific community to extent because they wanted to get political with it, and then you have people getting greed because they're getting paid off by big pharma? I don't think that that's something that establishes any kind of confidence in anybody, because now everybody's subjected to be like a guinea pig being taken random immunizations that may not even have an effect, but it has a negative effect on you. So I think if money was not an issue, and I mean in a sense that we could corrupt people, this could have had a different outcome.
Have you ever seen an actual extraterrestrial? Because I've seen two.
I have not ever seen an actual extraterrestrial. The only thing I saw was when we were doing the CE5 in Sedona as well as in Joshua Tree. That was incredible stuff. Did see some orbs or some lights that were kind of close to us, 20, 30 feet. But as far as personally seeing them, no. I wish I have. I mean, I have more understanding and tell everybody about that, but you know, unfortunately, I don't have that kind of experience.
Do you think extraterrestrials are here to hurt or help human life?
I think they're here to help us, man. We'd be dead. We'd have been long gone, conquered since. And here's the thing: would they have actually waited until we get to a point where we're destructive because now we have technologies that are borderline almost similar to what they have? They could have really conquered us when we're still gravitational for them time ago. What I think they're trying to do is they're going to teach us how to fish and not give us fish, if that makes sense. They want us to learn how to get along with each other. They want us to be more human, have more humanity towards each other. I think we have to stop the whole pointless wars. We have to stop the pointless greed, everything like that. And I think that once we're at a point that happens, if we ever get to that point, and that's one big if, I think that's when they'd actually understand that we could be in tandem with them in life, and I think that that's a major problem, is that we're obviously very violent as a race of people. And I think that since they've been taken down with weapons that we've reverse engineered, I think that's also something that about. So I don't think they're here to hurt us.
I hope it caught all of that because you kind of cut out for a little bit. It said my connection was kind of messed up, but sounds great. I'll leave you with this story. I was in my backyard. Well, I was going to my backyard. I couldn't breathe. I felt my chest closing. I fell and dented a metal rack in my home. The first thought I had was, I didn't want to, die on the floor right here. I reached my hand to the sky. I said I wanted to live. And then a pulse came down and every electronic device cut onto my house. And then I was all right.
Wow. How long ago did that happen?
I want to say probably about 2 or 3 years ago.
2 or 3 years ago? I mean, there's a lot of instances, there's a lot of miracles that happen like that. One of the things I tell people, religion to an extent, if you look at thousands of years ago, they had a god that made rain. They couldn't explain to you how rain occurs in condensation or whatever it might be, or how water evaporates, gets into the clouds, and then they start to accumulate rain, and it rains. So they weren't able to also explain an ecosystem. So the easiest thing for them to do is, oh, well, there's a god over there that makes rain. So we have to do things to please that god so he can bless us with rain. So they attribute that to wind. They attribute that to the sun. They attribute that to the moon. So I think in our understanding of trying to explain things that make sense to us logically, that could have been extraterrestrials that could have helped you out. That could have been something you and I don't know about yet because we've never came across anything like that. But I think the way that we explain things is what we experience. And the only thing that can make logical sense on that. So sometimes the most unbelievable stuff happens that we can't explain what the cause and how that actually happened. So I think for you to feel good at that point because something may be looking out for you is a huge blessing.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit more than that because I don't even know if I should disclose this, but like I said, I've seen probably over 1,000 of them. That's really what got me interested in Dr. Greer in the first place. The fact that I've seen so many. But
wow. What do you ever take video and pictures of any of your encounters with that stuff? Do you ever take videos and pictures?
Yeah, I got like a month of footage. I actually plan on clipping in a few pieces during this interview. So it'll be there.
Oh, nice. Good. I'd like to see that, man. I always want to see what, if you're having really fantastic contact events, man, I think a lot of people need to experience that for themselves too. And I think it helps to understand that, hey, you've had peaceful contact. What is there to be scared of,
Do you ever think government corruption will ever change?
I think the thing that needs to happen is that the public needs to literally grow a pair of balls, and they need to hold their representatives accountable. The other thing I'm going to say with this too, the whole point of the Second Amendment was to protect the citizens from the government, meaning that if they start getting tyrannical, corrupt, we have a law and a duty to eradicate that. So whoever wants to take that in the way they want to take it, good, but that is the whole point. And there's going to be a point where people realize this and wake up. And if they don't get their shit together, and I mean the people who are corrupt, you're going to find out. Because a lot of people are getting sick of it. And I think the corruption needs to stop. You're here to work for the people. You're here to help the people. You're not here for your private lobbyists because you want to sell yourself for money. Do the right thing. That's my message to them. That's what I think every person in government should be doing. You want more money? Go work harder. Come up with something more innovative to help humanity. You can make a lot of money off of that. But they want to be corrupt and they want to sell their souls and be corrupt. I don't think anybody likes that. So they need to understand that when people start to wake up and realize that we as citizens actually have the power, because they don't want us to be armed, because guess what? If we all unite together and we happen to be armed, we are the biggest military in the entire world. And do you think they have the resources to combat that? Because the people that they think that would help them are people in the military, people who took an oath to the Constitution, that has family members that they care about. These people are not going to kill their own families. They're not going to kill their own friends, and they're not going to kill innocent people. There may be other countries that are corrupt where this happens and people can go along with that because they're psychopaths, but a majority of people here would not stand for that. So one day, hopefully it never happens, but there is a possibility where people will wake up and unite, and that is something that they're not going to be able to curb.
What made you get involved with Dr. Greer?
He was one of the only people I knew that was talking about kind of the man-made aspect of it. And because what I experienced was man-made. There was really nobody who was ever talking about that, so for him having a position to where he can help people, that is why I contacted him and decided to go through him and to testify to the right appropriate parties for that. And he's been a very crucial part in that, because he knows what to do. He knows the people to talk to. And I'm very thankful for that.
What do you think about disinformation agents?
Well, it depends on what it is. If it's in a sense to keep people safe, because some people don't need to know, or say majority of people don't need to know what's going on, and it just further adds distress to somebody's life, I think it could be crucial on that point. But as far as lying outright to people for a certain agenda, I think that's wrong. I think it's 100% wrong. So there's always going to be disinformation agents out there. It doesn't matter if it's in this industry or this field, if you will. Doesn't matter if it's something that is involved in politics, corporations, anything to do with money. I think it's wrong. I just think that people need to know the truth, and sometimes the truth is shitty. Sometimes the truth is scary. But I think us as adults, I think we're the ones who can decide whether it's scary or something that we need to understand. Granted, I mean, do we need to know that there's, for example, if there's going to be an asteroid that's going to hit us right now and they have technologies to combat that, and let's just say if we do, because I know they do, and I'm talking about these deep black programs, would we necessarily need to worry about things that are not in our control? Not really. I think that's kind of the point of it, but I think it was taken and misconstrued in a position to put certain folks or agencies in power. That's just my personal opinion. But typically what I always advise people, don't stress yourself out of anything you can't control. The only thing you can control in life is your mentality and the way you view things. You can't control your hair. You can't control what your body decides to do. You can't control if you got cancer. You can help mitigate it, but it's just, how do I put it? You don't have to actually think about breathing, right? Your body's just doing it naturally, right? You don't have to think about growing skin cells or healing a cut. You don't have to focus on growing your fingernails, for example. You don't really have control over that. Your body's already doing it for you. So if you don't over that, and this is what you have, such as the world, such as what certain countries or certain people are doing, or how they think, or what they believe, you really don't.
So you said you said a 33-degree Mason. Like what is that actually about? Like, is it only about I want to say the laws, or can you drop a little bit of knowledge, because I'm like unaware of that organization.
So the organization itself has been around for thousands of years. It's not, it's more of kind of like a brotherhood, or what people call a fraternity, right? Or fraternity. So the reason why I enjoy it is because there's a lot of history involved. There's a lot, like the founding fathers example, were Masons. There's a lot of prominent people in society who are Masons, a lot of inventors, a lot of people who, a lot of influential people. And understanding where we all have a common mindset, I think, because typically what a lot of people understand, when you network with people, this is a thing I love about Freemasonry, is I was able to meet very interesting people, very smart people, and that networking has allowed me to be successful in a lot of ways. So if you have like-minded individuals who you bond with, who you guys have the same mindset, the same understanding, maybe the same outlooks, you're going to go a lot farther with that, right? You're going to, in a sense, with that, we get to help out people. There's a lot of money that's devoted to children, St. Jude's Hospital, for example, cancer research, among other things. So we actually get to benefit society in a lot of ways. So there's also the aspect too, and just like with anything, any industry, any job, whatever it might be, you have bad apples in every kind of work that you do. So there's some people who may be Masons, but they take advantage of certain things. Or they are a Mason, but they choose to do bad things. Doesn't mean that all Masons are bad. It just means that person had a lapse in judgment and should have done the right thing. But because we're a group, people associate that with a lot of different conspiracy theories. It's almost like, a police officer, for example, because they decide to defend themselves and somebody records the video and only shows a certain part of it, but then it gets blown out of proportion. Everybody then has the understanding, oh, well, cops are all bad because this looked like he just shot an innocent person, but they didn't see that he actually had a weapon and it fell out of his hand or something. You know what I mean? So that's just an example of it. I could spend a whole couple hours talking about this, but I think, if it's something that's interesting to people, petition your local lodge, and you may learn a lot of things about it. You may learn a lot of things about yourself, because that's what ultimately it does, is it teaches you a lot about yourself. Accountability. You essentially are the one that masters your own universe, your own life, if you will, and you're responsible for your decisions of what you do and what you don't do. So it really helps with that.
What do you think could help further peace on the planet?
As far as a brotherhood, I think it would be, but it goes into beliefs. And one of the things in lodge that we do not ever talk about is politics and religion, because that is, there's people who are hardcore on that. And there's obviously wars have been waged because of politics and things like that, as well as religion. So what we try to do is find the common ground with every human being. This has to do with a lot of spiritualism too. So I think if people are spiritual in a sense, and I think they can put their differences aside and come together as people and often be like brothers, because we all have families, we all have mouths to feed, we have people to take care of, we all want to be successful in life. So if we all come together to try to help ourselves become successful, then it's much easier to do that. So I think it's a big lesson that needs to be learned, because it can promote peace throughout humanity.
Would you ever join an anti-alien movement? Because I've actually been to a few of these conferences, and some people believe that they should actually destroy UFOs and whatever is coming in. And some of the stories that they tell are actually like Dr. Greer says, like supposedly they were like abducted or something, or like tortured or hurt by a supposed ET.
I would never join anything like that. I think there's a lot of misconception. From what I personally know, there's a lot of black programs and programs that involve the contractors to actually do stagecraft, like Dr. has talked about extensively, because there's some contacts I have that have participated in stuff like that. So I know very well that that side of it's real, but the ETs abducting people, torturing them, things like that, that's not real. That's done intentionally by these groups because they want to establish fear, and that's how they try to do it. They try to scare people. They try to scare politicians because it's happened in the past. So for anybody joining those movements, you're really not understanding what you're being a part of. You're just, some people want to do things to get clout, or they want to do things to be with a group because they think that they're contributing to something, but ultimately they're being misguided. So I think off of consciousness, and I think off of an understanding that they can actually maybe put their judgment aside, or maybe put what they think they know aside and actually learn what the truth is, I think they'd be beneficial to that. But as far as joining a group that's anti-ET or UFO, whatever it is, no, I would never do that. Granted, if before my experience, I never would join a group anyway like that, but I mean, like I said, I didn't believe in the subject at all until I had my experience, and that's what basically made it full blown. Like, holy shit, this is real. And knowing the truth of it's even darker, but it's just, it is what it is, and we just have to roll forward with that knowledge and try to change things from that part of it, and then make it better. So I'm just trying to bring awareness to that.
All right. All right, I think I might want to end it around here, unless there's anything else you would like to talk about. Feel free.
No, man, I think we hit some good subjects and get some good questions I was never asked. So I think that you're going outside the box. You're trying to get people on a personal level with what they think or what their mindset is on things, which is huge. So thank you for the support too, man, and thank you. It was nice meeting you at Dr. Greer's event. And I'm glad that you're at least getting the message out there, and you're actually showing people and telling people what you've personally experienced. I think it goes a long way. So keep up the good work with that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you too, man, for doing this interview. Really appreciate it.